In a second, we're going to kick off. We've got an amazing panel. It's hosted, moderated by Caroline Foster Kennedy. She's Global Chief Client Officer at Wunderman, and featuring Toby Horry, Director of Brand Comms and Content at TUI. Diana Williams, who's Client Services Director at Creative Equals, an incredible organisation. And Sean Robinson, EMEA Consumer Marketing Lead at Facebook. So if I can ask my panelists to come up on stage now, and we're going to kick off with an incredible panel to start today. So please come and join me on stage.
Yeah, you go. People are hearing through the headphones, so that's why I can't hear anything. Thank you. Hi.
Hi, everyone good?
And it's over to you.
Yeah. Hi, thank you. Hi, everyone.
We're going to have to shout to each other.
Good morning. This is quite strange because we don't have the headphones on. Can you give me, I presume you can hear us, right?
Perfect. It's so weird.
So, can you hear me?
Belly. Yeah.
I'm going to have to shout so that they can hear, right?
Cool.
Okay. So a big warm welcome. It's really great to be here. I know we were promised summer sunshine. We don't have that, and we're in a car park. But despite all of that, I just think it's so amazing to be here in real life and see people in real life. So my name's Caroline Foster Kennedy. I'm the Global Chief Client Officer at Wunderman Thompson. And I'd like to introduce our other panelists here. But before I do, just to say I'm very pleased this is at the start of the morning because we consider this a very, very important subject that we want to talk about. But first off, I'll just introduce the panel again. So first of all, we have Dinah Williams here, and Dinah is Client Services Director at Creative Equals. She's also co-head of allyship at Bloom UK, and she's a member and co-founder of Bloom in Colour Inclusion Group. We also have next along is Toby Horry, and Toby is Global Group Brand and Content Director at TUI. And we also have Sean Shabande, who is Global Consumer Marketing Lead at Facebook. So thanks everyone for joining me today. Now, each of the panels have been part of either the steering group or the advisory board of something called Brim. And we're going to talk to you about Brim today. But each of our panel members have also been part of actually acting and implementing Brim in their organisation. But before we kick off, are you sure you can hear me?
Yeah.
Before we kick off, I think I just want to sort of place a few numbers and a few stats out there. So recently, the industry findings from the All-In census, which happened earlier this year, and the findings were in literally last month. Now, those findings show that black representation in marketing in our industry is just 3%, a measly 3%. And actually, when you look at C-suite, it goes down to 1% of our industry is black in the C-suite. What the survey also told us was that 22% of the black talent in our industry are reporting that they've experienced discrimination within, due to ethnicity within their industry, and 32%, so nearly 1/3, are likely to leave the industry due to the lack of inclusion and or discrimination that they've experienced. So those are pretty major numbers, and I think we all know that there are some good things happening in the industry, but clearly they're also just showing that we are not moving fast enough, quick enough, or doing enough. There's so much more to be done. Now, one of those first steps that we could do is what we call Brim, and that's what we want to talk to you about today. So maybe you're wondering, what is Brim? So let's start off with you, Sean, and maybe you can share with everyone, who is Brim? What is Brim?
So this reminds me of the first time I went to a restaurant after lockdown and had no idea if anything was actually working, and nor did the people. So I think, let me answer your question the reverse way. So if you go, most people here work in advertising media. If you go onto any website, there's some jargon about how they describe their company. We're change makers, we're innovative, we're disruptive, we change the narrative, we're storytellers. All of these types of things all mean the same thing essentially. However, then when you get to, so you're like, okay, so your job is, as marketers and advertisers, is adding value through change and perception. That's what we do. However, then once we get to a topic like, Black representation or equity, all of these innovators and change makers and disruptors suddenly get stuck with this continuous bullshit narrative around inertia of not knowing where to start with things. I'm like, but you say that this is something that you need to change, and this is what you do as companies, and so, but you always get stuck with this, but we don't know where to start, it's very difficult. I've never in my years in advertising got a brief where the agency has come back and said, this brief is really difficult, so we're not going to do it. And so what Brim is is actually, so it's a set of tools and it's a framework and it's ways of companies being able to start, to take the first step by either adopting a goal or a principle or reading some of the tools and things that are already out there, because we're not reinventing the wheel, we're just putting it into an actionable framework so you can move from we don't know where to start, which is kind of pathetic anyway, to okay, these are some ways in which we could start based on what our intentions and our goals are. And we really kind of try to frame it around this idea of start meaningfully so that you can pull it through to is it a business goal? How do we measure it in a few months? How do we measure it in a year? How do we know that we're making progress against these topics of Black representation, whether that be the people that we see on screen, whether that be dispelling harmful stereotypes around how we represent Black people in advertising or marketing, or whether it actually is about the talent who are making the work, who are part of the work, who are in the agencies, and who you see on a day-to-day basis. And just a really interesting thing about what Helen was saying about the 3% kind of representation. I've worked in agencies where there are hundreds of people, thousands of people. 3% would mean that there was more than one of me, and most places I've worked at, there has only been just one. So that's what Brim really is around, how to get started when you're stuck in this inertia of we don't know what to do first.
Thank you. And I think also to build on that as well, I mean, this is an industry initiative. So there was, I think, 12 or 15 brands, agencies, media owners that have set it up, and it's absolutely open to everyone across the industry. And what we also talk about is taking those sort of good intentions and turning them into meaningful actions. And I wonder, Dinah, if that's what you could maybe sort of talk a bit more about, and what kind of actions and changes are we hoping to see from this?
Yeah, 100%. I think when we talk about meaningful action, do something immediately that will have impact. If we looked at major players' latest survey around how people are paid for the same level job, you'll have a white male that's paid £20,000 more than a Black woman doing exactly the same job. Pay equally. Yeah. Let's just start with the simple things. If you're doing the same job, pay equally. If that's not rocket science, that's just being fair. Make sure that you're not just getting talent through the door. I always say, how are you supporting them once they are through that door? So you can have, we're talking about diversity, we want to kind of pull in diverse talent. What are you doing once they get into your organisation? How are you ensuring that they don't feel othered, they don't feel the pressure of being the only? And how are you making sure that retention piece is being done? So when they are exiting the business, are you asking the right questions about why this hasn't worked out? Or is there no data? Start collecting data. It's as simple as that. The data is there. If you're open with your intentions about why you're collecting that data, people will lean in. Yeah. People will lean in. People want to be seen, want to be heard. So start collecting the data. That's why it always makes me smile when we hear that. I don't know where to start. Start by collecting the data. Start by being open about your intentions. Start by paying equally.
Sounds good. And I think that maybe, Toby, to hear more from you, as we said, many brands have been involved, and personally I think brands need to also have some responsibility, of course, of their marketing communication. So maybe you could tell us a bit more of why you've been involved and what you're actually doing with the Brim framework.
Yeah, absolutely. So as you say, pressure's got to come from agency side, but it's got to come from client side as well. So it's really important that as clients we are part of the progress and part of making things better. So that's why right from the off we were really keen to get involved in the Brim framework. And I think, I do recognise this thing, and I've probably been guilty of it, saying, don't know where to start. And I think Brim always takes away that excuse because it's really clear. It breaks it down into 4 key areas in which you can make a difference and just shows you how you can make those simple, small steps. What it's not saying is that as a client or as an agency, you're going to fix everything overnight. It's completely impractical, but it does show you where to make those first steps. And already, although the Brim framework's only been out 2 months, 2 or 3 months,
April.
we've already at TUI made, I can point to 5, 6, 7 things we're doing as a direct result of seeing the Brim framework and going, we need to do better at that, we need to change that. So now, and clearly, I'm not saying those 5, 6, 7 things are enough. We need to do a hell of a lot more things. But the framework is just so useful in helping to really break it down into those sort of manageable chunks, so you can make that first step.
Brilliant. And can you give us a couple of examples of those steps?
Yeah. So at TUI we sell holidays, or at least we hopefully do in normal times. And so we have a hell of a lot of content on our website for all sorts of different types of holiday. One thing that prompted us to do off the back of the Brim framework is to do an audit of our content, and there's a lot of content, so that's quite a big task. It's not a simple task. But just one example was we do weddings around the world. We do same-sex weddings. We realised we didn't have sufficient same-sex content on our website and in our brochures. So we're going to do a shoot later in the summer to rectify that. So I think that's the other thing about Brim, is that it's about black representation in marketing, but it's also about making you think hard about all the different dimensions of diversity and equality in all your marketing. And so that's just one small example of a number of different things that we're doing.
Yeah, and I think you raise a really good point as well, because the Brim framework is covered, and when we talk about better black representation in marketing, it's for behind the camera as well as in front of the camera as well. And I think we've got a few initiatives coming up in Brim that will also help more with the behind the camera too.
Yeah, and I think as part of when we're talking about black representation, it's also, when it's like where to start, I think it's also important to acknowledge that when we say where to start, it's starting with rectifying the problem that the marketing industry has been so pervasive at actually the stereotypes that they have pervaded about black people for so long around. I think some of the things when you see, so perfect example is if you take a Nike football ad, for example, and I love Nike football ads, and you see, so the Nike London ad, and it has like Skepta, and it has Giggs, and it has Alex Iwobi, and it has Michael Dapper in it. Everyone's like, this ad is fantastic because you have a black comedian, you have a black rapper, you have a black sports person. Because the marketing industry has said that it's okay to represent black people that way. But then when you take something like the Sainsbury's ad, for example, all it has in there is a black family enjoying Christmas, and everyone loses their mind. And I think it's important for all of us here to say, people aren't losing their mind because they're racist. People are losing some people are, but people are losing their mind because the marketing industry has said that black people don't have a role in advertising where they are just normal. They have to be the funny one, they have to be the smart one, they have to be the cool one, they have to be the person that dances. And so semiotically, people have learned to decode black people's presence in marketing, in entertainment, as it has to be there for a purpose. So if you just show black people being, you get backlash because we've created these issues. And so I think part of Brim is where to start, but it's also where to unravel the problems that we have continued to ignore or been complicit in aggregating for so long. And so I think those are really interesting things that we need to think about, is not only how do we represent black people better, how do we commonly represent black people, and why might that be an issue? And so I think those are some of the things that I think are really important to question in terms of when you think about where you start. So when you talk about having a content audit, it's a really great place to be like, okay, what are we not doing? And actually, what are we doing that we can do better? And just to, not to waffle on, but there is this really great sketch in, it's this BBC Three program called Familand, and they have this sketch where it's about mixed race couples in advertising selling things. And it's essentially the advertising industry and marketing industry's response to, we don't have enough representation, but we're scared if we took too many black people in, was every single ad was just, it's either black man and white woman, black man, car ad, toilet ad, like, babe, whatever you, and it looks so transparent because that's not what representation looks like. Representation doesn't look like everything being diversely perfect all the time. It's more so that you have layers of how you see people that are reflective as what you would see in society. And so I think that's one of the things that you really think about with Brim is if you have that talent who are telling those stories, they can tell them in a more representative way because that's how they actually experience life.
Yeah, it's a really great example again of how you can use and apply the framework. Now, I know we're running out of time really. I wonder if you could just change the slide because you know what we would like you to do, please, for everyone in this room is to it's just coming up. Hopefully there should be a slide with a barcode on, and hopefully we're not sitting in the way of it. There should be one more slide. Hopefully it's coming up. And for you to scan the barcode, and it will take you to the Brim framework. And this is literally for everyone. This isn't, I think, first of all, it's not just about waiting for the leaders in your organisation or the HR teams or the ESGs to get involved in this. You know, black representation in marketing, better black representation in marketing is not a problem of black people, it's our problem. So it's just so essential. It's moving, thank you, Toby. It's really essential that everyone please does that, and it doesn't matter what level you are, whether it's an exec, you can use it, but it's just, as we said, it's very helpful tools, how-to guides, it's commitments, and then share that with your colleagues. Please share it with your clients as well, and let's sort of see what we can do with that action. So I'm sorry that we're out of time, but thank you very much, Felicity, and thank you very much for my panellists. Okay.